Hello everybody, hi everybody, Assalamu alaikum. I hope everyone is okay, and I do dua that the Creator Allah protect everyone from coronavirus and all types of viruses and diseases. Ameen. Now this book, as you can see, Evolution's Final Days, and I will begin to read from chapter. Actually, I'll read from the introduction. For thousands of years, humans have been coming up with ideas trying to explain how our world operates and how we got here. We are fascinated by the complexity and intricacies of our world and have a desire to explain it. Before the 1800s, there weren't many good ideas to explain the existence of humans. Many scientists were a little confused, and so you got Jean-Baptiste Lamarck is considered the first evolutionist and briefly predated Darwin. He held a belief known as soft inheritance. This belief stated that organisms do change over time, and this change was related to adaptations while living, which was passed on to offspring. An example being a giraffe's neck muscle was strengthened by trying to reach the top of a tree, thus making its neck grow longer. And over many generations, as each giraffe tried to reach the top of tree branches, the necks grew more and more each time, which was then passed down to the offspring. So that's the introduction, and I will skip a little bit. So that from page 8, I'm going to page 9. Then in 1859, Charles Darwin published his book, Origin of Species. He suggested the idea of slow gradual change by natural selection over many millions of years was the explanation of the diversity of life on the planet. He suggested that humans were just the descendants of a long line of other species. And don't forget the key word is suggested, had morphed or evolved over a long period of time. The scientific community widely accepted his viewpoint, and eventually the theory of evolution, or specifically the Darwinian theory of evolution, was born. Something to note is just like Lamarck, Charles Darwin believed in soft inheritance, as in an animal's traits could be passed on to future generations simply through acquiring them in this life. Darwin did not have an understanding of DNA or genetics like we do today. Just skipping and part 1. Microevolution. Organisms change over time. Microevolution. This is understandable. Yeah. Evolution in general. Biological change over time. Microevolution. And not even the most hardcore creationists would argue this. However, there are two types of evolutionary processes, microevolution and macroevolution. Microevolution would be considered changes within a species, usually over a short period. A good example of this would be bacteria becoming resistant to antibiotics. Penicillin was developed in the late 1920s and soon became widely prescribed to treat infections. That was page 11. Going to page 12. Charles Darwin visited the Galapagos Islands and noticed that the finches on each of the islands vary slightly, particularly in their beak. Lamarck had helped Darwin develop his explanation for life in the form of evolution by natural selection. The finches on each of the islands had evolved over many generations, or developed, changed a little bit. Thus, natural selection caused the evolution of the finches, species in the Galapagos. Page 13. I first want to point out that no one is denying that natural selection is a reasonable theory and does take place on Earth. But I want you to notice something here which is not mentioned in biological textbooks when they mention this proof of evolution. This is microevolution. The finch did not become a fish. The finch did not become a fish and move off into the ocean. Simply over many years, the finches with the better suited traits survived, and finches with traits less suited for their environment died off. While microevolution is a part of the theory of evolution, macroevolution is an even bigger and, if not true, would discredit the entire theory. Page 14. I will skip page 14. Part 2. Macroevolution. Macroevolution is defined as the evolution of groups outside of their own species. An example would be the evolutionary claim water-dwelling animals like reptiles evolved into land-dwelling mammals. Macroevolution has never been observed. Macroevolution has never been observed, and for good reason. Macroevolution is supposed to be a very gradual process, taking place over millions of years. Considering this, the actual observation of it cannot take place, which evolutionists point out whenever the question is brought up. However, had there been such transition from species to species taking place over an imaginary time period, evolutionists cite and is continuing to this day, wouldn't there still be species transitioning? Why has the transitioning of species stopped? There is absolutely no scientific evidence of crosses between species. Let's look at an evolutionist chart showing the tree of life. As you can see, now you can get the tree of life diagram on Google. As you can see from the chart above, the evolutionary theory states we started from a common ancestor. This is page 16 of this particular book, Evolution's Final Days, The Mounting Evidence Disproving the Theory of Evolution by John Morrison. Page 16. We started from a common ancestor single-celled organism which soon began breaking off into different families, and from those points more distinct species were formed. While it's a nice-looking chart, the problem we run into is it's not what we observe here on Earth. Neither our own observation of currently living species nor the fossil record show any indication of such a chart. Instead, this is what we see. The chart above is what we actually observe in the world around us. There are no transitional species. But instead one species in different forms. An example would be a cat. You have a cheetah, a lion, a house cat, and so forth. While different, they all belong to the same family of animal called Felidae. This is another example of microevolution as opposed to macroevolution, and the fossil record, which we will touch on later, doesn't do much for evolutionary theory either, or to be specific, Darwinian theory of evolution. It shows the same exact types of formations as we see in current times, without the transitioning species that evolutionists claim to have existed. Page 18, I will stop here for this video and I will continue soon, hopefully tomorrow. Thank you for listening. This is a really good book and I have already read it once. My name is Mohammed Raj Abdullah. you should get a copy from Amazon. Evolution's Final Days, the Mounting Evidence Disproving the Theory of Evolution. And it's not long, you could read it in, if you're a fast reader, you can probably read it in 1 hour. And it only has 73 pages, or 73, 74 pages if you include the introduction. It's not very long. Perfect, to get a copy, read this book and talk amongst your friends and family that Darwinists and evolutionists have been lying to us. Also, what I would like to add, there is a book also that I am reading, I haven't finished reading, called What Darwin Got Wrong by Jerry Fodder. And Jerry Fodder is an atheist. So, he wrote this book. Jerry Fodder is an atheist, and he wrote the book What Darwin Got Wrong. And basically, Jerry Fodder says no one can tell us how the phenotypes, how the animals, evolved. Basically saying, there are no transitional species. And also, where did the animals originated in the first place? And, don't tell me, some primordial soup 3.5 billion years ago, some hot soup and, chemicals, bubbling, and then suddenly there is what we call organic matter. There is a single cell. I mean, even single cell has, like thousands and thousands of atoms. So, Darwinists have been lying to us. That's the truth. And Charles Darwin, sorry to say, he was a racist. And Charles Darwin was raised as a Christian. And then, because I'm sorry to say, the New Testament has many errors, so Darwin just basically, stopped becoming Christian, and basically he, thought, and don't forget the church, the Vatican was strong back then, going back about 170 years. And so, what I think personally, Darwin had an agenda, meaning he just went to the Galapagos and came back and, aha, I have found this theory of evolution. Aha, we all come from a single cell. Absolutely rubbish. Absolute nonsense. Darwinists have an agenda. Darwinism is a religion. I think this other guy is called James Huxley. He wrote a book called Revelation Without God. Basically, this is the devil. And I know the atheists don't believe in the devil, but the devil is real. And when the devil gets you, I'm telling you, when the devil gets you, there is, you're done. Unless, you have a strong will. It's like, atheism is like a drug. And like, someone who is addicted to heroin and cocaine, it's very hard for them to get off it. Seriously. And you would find, rarely, you would find some people who are strong-willed and they will be able to get off heroin. Atheism is like a drug like heroin. And, these atheists, they choose to be atheist because, it's a choice. That's right. And it's based on arrogance. I would like to stop this video right now. Thank you for listening. Talk to you soon.